decided to meet my enemies. I was a 27-year-old award-winning documentary filmmaker and a proud feminist, and I was determined to expose the dark underbelly of the men's rights movement. At that point, all I knew of the men's rights movement was from what I read online, that it's a misogynistic hate group actively working against women's equality.
You see how society puts that little twist on it anytime a man starts talking about the injustice that he has to deal with or the issues that he has to deal with. And when they start talking about we want equality, now we're the enemy. We're misogynists because we want equal rights in society and the court system, which is where the two biggest injustices are for men.
Well, the vast majority of my previous work was about women's issues. I directed documentaries about reproductive rights, single motherhood, and the need for more girls to get into STEM education.
Really, she fought for women's rights, and one of the things she listed was single motherhood. That has always been a right. Women have that out the gate. Women have that the second the child is conceived. Men don't have any rights until he actually goes through, all the DNA process and stuff. If you as a man, if you decided to take off with a kid, if there was no custody agreement, you decided to take off with a kid, do you think the court system is going to be okay with that because there wasn't a court order? Absolutely not. They're going to be like, how dare you take that child away from his mother? But a woman can do it. She can conceal the birth. She can take off with your child, just completely disappear. And they're going to be like, oh, well, you must not have wanted to be a part of your child's life. That's how they view it. Even if that statement is not true, even if you do want to be a part of the child's life, but if she disappears, you don't know where she is, what do? So single motherhood, there's always been that right. They get the right out the gate. Men are the one who has to jump through hoops to get the rights.
So when I learned that no one had ever documented the men's rights movement in a film before, I saw it as an opportunity to continue fighting for women's equality by exposing those preventing it.
I'm just real quick. I just want to know, what equality are women fighting for that they don't already have? And the majority of the time, if you ask them that, they're going to say, well, we don't have enough women CEOs in the workplace, or this quote-unquote gender pay gap, which actually not only does not exist, it's also illegal. But if your concern is that there's not enough women CEOs, the reason for that is because women don't have that kind of ambition. See, the women who actually fought for women's rights, the right to be able to work and vote and all that stuff, those women wanted to be CEOs. Modern women these days do not want to be CEOs. They want to be the housewife while the man works and takes care of the bills, and all she has to do is go shopping with her girlfriends. So that's why you don't see any women CEOs. So you're not oppressed. You're choosing not to go for it. You have the right. The right is there. You just decide that you don't want it. You don't want to have to put in the effort it takes to get that.
So for 1 year, I traveled North America, meeting the leaders and followers of the men's rights movement. I spent anywhere from 2 hours up to 8 hours interviewing each individual men's rights activist, also known as MRA. And I filmed 44 people total. And there's an important rule in documentary filmmaking. As an interviewer, you do not interrupt. So I'm asking questions, and I'm getting their full life story. And in the moment, I didn't realize it. But now looking back, I can see that while I was conducting my interviews, I wasn't actually listening.
And nobody ever really does when men are talking about men's issues. Nobody actually listens. They might hear you. They're not listening because they don't care.
I was hearing them speak, and I knew the cameras were recording. But in those moments of sitting across from my enemy, I wasn't listening. What was I doing? I was anticipating. I was waiting to hear a sentence, or even just a couple of words in succession that proved what I wanted to believe, that I had found the misogynist.
See? Just what I said. Like they're hearing you. But they're not actually listening to your issues because they care. They're listening to what you're saying because they're waiting for you to say something misogynist that is going to prove that they are right. That's all they're doing. They don't actually care what you're dealing with.
The ground zero of the war on women. A couple of times
Just real quick, I just gotta ask, what is this war on women? That part does not make sense to me. What is this war on women? If society is catering to women so much, and if you think they're not, please do the research. There are many different ways women are being catered to, especially when it comes to government assistance and the court system. So, what is this war on women? Please let me know.
Thought I had it. There was one men's rights activist that said to me, just walk outside and look around. Everything you see was built by a man. Ooh, his statement felt anti-women. I felt my jaw clench, but I sat quietly.
I don't really see how that would be anti-women. Alright, that's just a fact. And it's not to say that there are not women in construction, but the majority of construction workers are men. So when they say men built this and men built that, that's not anti-women, that's just a fact. It was a group of men that built that. There were no women there helping them do so.
As a documentarian should, while removing all the space between my upper and lower molars. After my year of filming, I was reviewing the 100 hours of footage I had gathered, replaying and transcribing it, which, believe me when I say, no one will ever listen to you more than someone who transcribes your words. You should write that down. So, I was typing out every word meticulously, and through that process, I began to realize that my initial knee-jerk reactions to certain statements weren't really warranted, and my feeling offended didn't hold up to intense scrutiny. Was that statement about men having built the skyscrapers and the bridges anti-women? I thought, well, what would be the gender reverse scenario? Maybe a feminist saying, just look around. Everyone you see was birthed by a woman. Wow, that's a powerful statement. And it's true. Is it anti-male? I don't think so. I think it's acknowledging our unique and valued contributions to our society.
Acknowledging our unique and valuable contribution to society. To say that that's not, my personal opinion, that actually does sound anti-male to me. Because granted, everyone you see was in fact birthed by a woman. But to say that that's not anti-male is to say that you created that child on your own, and obviously that's not ever going to happen. In order for you to birth any child, you have to have a man. So and when you're saying every person was birthed by a woman, granted that is absolutely true. But you're taking away the fact that you needed a man to give you that. So if every person was birthed by a woman, then you also have to look at every one of them and say all of those people were also made by a man. And we're not considering that our unique and valuable contribution to society. That's our biology. That's what we were put here to do. We are all put here to reproduce. A man's job is to make the child, and a woman's job is to birth the child. That's just biology.
Well, luckily, while I was making the Red Pill movie, I kept a video diary, which ended up tracking my evolving views. And in looking back on the 37 diaries I recorded that year, there was a common theme. I would often hear an innocent and valid point that a men's rights activist would make, but in my head, I would add on to their statement a sexist or anti-woman spin, assuming that's what they wanted to say but didn't.
As most women do these days. If you say something, they're going to put their spin on it to fit their narrative. That's how they do.
So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist in MRA would say to me, there are over 2,000 domestic violence shelters for women in the United States, but only one for men. Yet multiple reputable studies show that men are just as likely to be abused. I would hear them say, we don't need 2,000 shelters for women. They're all lying about being abused. It's all a scam.
And that's exactly the kind of spin that they put on that. And we're not saying that they're lying about it, and in a lot of cases these days they do, because women are so good and so quick to play that victim card, and society and law enforcement and the court system is buys into it so quickly and so easily. It's just a norm for them. But what they're saying, they're not saying that, the women who are actually dealing with that, they're not saying that those issues do not matter. But like this lady just stated, there's over 2,000 shelters for women. Meaning if they're going through a bad situation, there's a network of people or a network of assistance that's going to help not only get them out, but help put them on their feet so that they can better their own life. And then she just stated there's only one for men, which means she said we are just as likely to be victims, and that is absolutely true. But, society and the court systems and even law enforcement don't want to acknowledge that. They kind of laugh that off. If you as a man was to report some woman being, physical or emotionally tormenting, I'm trying to use my words carefully. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. But if you as a man, if you're trying to report those types of crimes, because that is a crime, you get laughed off. They laugh in your face. They're like, oh my God, are you serious, dude? It's a woman. What is she really doing to you? You mean to tell me you can't handle that little girl? So we don't have any resources to actually reach out to. We're just stuck in that situation with everybody laughing in our faces when we try to get some help for it.
But in looking back on all the footage I gathered of men's rights activists talking about shelters, and all the blogs they've written and the video live streams they posted on YouTube, they're not trying to defund women's shelters. Not at all. All they're saying is that men can be abused too, and they deserve care and compassion.
That's true, we do deserve it, but we don't get it. We get shamed. That's what we get. We try to report something like that, even if it is absolutely true. Because a lot of guys, and like me personally, like I was raised up with this mentality that I'm never ever, and I never will hit a woman. Because I believe in the way I was raised and the way I was taught that, if you as a man even raise your hand to hit a woman, you no longer have the right to call yourself a man, because real men don't do that. And a lot of men have that mentality. A lot of men have those values and those morals. So if a woman is attacking them, they don't want to retaliate in that way, because it goes against their values and their morals. And, to top that off, if, that automatically is going to paint you as the aggressor. Whether or not you were defending yourself does not matter. She can wail on you for 2 hours straight. The one time you hit her back, now you're the guilty one. You see how that works? There's no help for us. We're just told to deal with it.
Second example. A men's rights activist would say to me, "Where is justice for the man who was falsely accused of raping a woman? And because of this accusation, he loses his college scholarship and is branded with the inescapable title of rapist." I would hear them say, "A woman being raped isn't a big deal." It's as if I didn't hear the word falsely accused of rape. All I heard was he was accused of rape.
And that's how most people hear it. They just kind of disregard that falsely part. And how many men out there have, done time for a woman who falsely accused you of something? And like she said, he loses his future, and in most cases, if there's kids involved, he lost them first. Which was the whole point of the false allegation to begin with. And I mean, who's coming to your rescue? Who's coming to help you out? Did anybody come to fight for you to prove that you were actually innocent? If you were already charged with it and you did time and you're doing time, is anybody coming in there saying, look, this guy's innocent and this woman needs to be held accountable for the false allegation? No, they're not saying that. They're saying, you know what, he's a man, he probably was the aggressor. She's a woman, she probably was the victim. So this is how we're going to judge it.
Of course, rape is a big deal, and all the men's rights activists I met agreed it is a horrible thing to have happened to anyone. I eventually realized what they're saying is they're trying to add to the gender equality discussion who is standing up for the good-hearted, honorable man that loses his scholarship, his job, or worse yet, his children.
See? Just proved my point right there. Who's standing up for the men who are losing their jobs and their house and their cars and their kids especially over a false allegation? Who is standing up for them? I mean, because even if you at some point down the road figure out that he was innocent, and even if you do give him some kind of retribution, if he lost time with his kids, that's something you can never give him back. If he had a good, stable job and he had been working his way up, and now he's got to start from scratch, you can't give that back to him. The house that he was in before he went and did time, you can't give that back to him because that's already in somebody else's possession. So the retribution that you're giving him is not making up for what he lost.
Because he's accused of something he absolutely did not do. Well, I couldn't keep denying the points they were making. There are real issues. But in my effort to avoid agreeing with my enemy completely, I changed from putting words in their mouth to acknowledging the issue, but insisting they are women's issues. So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist would say to me, men are far more likely to lose their child in a custody battle. And I would counter, well, because women are unfairly expected to be the caretaker, it's discrimination against women that women get custody more often.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that first point she made was, that's a very valid thing that a lot of guys have to deal with, that we're losing custody of our kids. And that's a big deal to us, And not only to us, it's actually really harmful to the kid or kids, however many you have, because the kids end up losing out on time with their biological father, especially if it's a father that really wants to be involved in that child's life. But then to turn around and to play the victim card on that as you're saying that you're the victim because the court gave you full custody. Well, that's not fair. I'm automatically, expected to be the caretaker. That's not fair. And the problem with it is while they're saying that, they don't actually mean it. Because the majority of time, especially in 2021, with the way modern women are and the way they use kids as a tool to get back at the man for ending the relationship, the majority of the time when they're going into court, they plan on coming out of there with full or at least primary custody. So when they get that, they're not actually thinking that. Okay, they're thinking, yes, I told you I was going to take your kids. Ha ha, you should have, stuck with me. If you wanted to see your kids, you should have made it work, and so on and so on. And if they're saying stuff like that, that's playing the victim card. That's trying to pull at the sympathy strings of society. Oh, I'm the victim. The court has placed this child with me, and now all of the responsibility is on me. And they say that so that society says, oh my God, you poor thing. You know what? We are going to help you out. We are going to cater to you. We are going to give you a house. We're going to take care of your lights. We're going to take care of your food. We're going to take care of your Medicare. And so on and so on. So, I mean, that's really kind of how that works. That's manipulation. That statement there is not only playing the victim, that's manipulation.
Yeah. I'm not proud of that. Second example, an MRA would say to me, men are roughly 78% of all suicides throughout the world. And I would counter with, but women attempt suicide more often. So ha. Ha? It's not a contest, but I kept making it into one.
When you talk about the rates that she was talking about, the men who would actually succeed versus the women who just try more. And there's a difference in that, okay? The women who are trying more, granted, I haven't actually checked the stats, but I've heard numerous people say that the stats are kind of balanced like that, as if the men succeed, but the women actually try more. And the reason that is because most of the time when women are trying, when they are the quote-unquote attempting, the only reason they're doing it is basically they're seeking some form of attention or validation. Like maybe there's a guy that's not giving them the commitment that they want, and they've been chasing him for years, so she's like, and maybe he ghosted her or something, and so she's like, you know what, I'm gonna do this to myself to see if he cares. So she's not actually trying, she's making it look like she's trying to do that in order to find out whether or not this guy cares. So again, she's seeking that attention. Whereas when guys actually go through with it, when they actually accomplish it, the reason most of them, the reason they're actually doing it is because in most cases, and like she stated earlier, men are just as likely to be victims as women are. And as I pointed out, society and the court system and law enforcement don't seem to think so. And so when we're bringing up issues, and they're just laughing in our faces, and they're telling us just to deal with it. Like the saying goes, and every man or everyone has heard the phrase "man up or take it like a man," and that's because we're the ones who have to deal with the injustice. We're the ones that are told that our problems don't matter. Our problems are not a big deal. And so when men actually go through with it, is the majority of the time it's because they don't see any other way out. They've been trying to get help for so long. Like they may have went to law enforcement. They've tried to get several people involved that would help them out. And every time they do, they have to, instead of getting the help that they're looking for, they get shamed for allowing a woman to do what she does, even though he's doing his part as a honorable man in not retaliating against her. So whereas he should be credited for not retaliating, instead he's shamed for just allowing it to happen. Oh my God, she's a woman. You should be able to handle her. But yeah, you knock her out, and they're going to be like, why did you do that? Well, she was hitting me for 2 hours. Stowe, you still shouldn't have done that. And that's what we're faced with. So again, like I said, when guys go through with it, it's because they're like, look, I have dealt with this so long. I have tried to get help. Nobody's helping me out. There's just no other way out. So I got to do what I got to do.
Why couldn't I simply learn about men's issues and have compassion for male victims without jumping at the opportunity to insist that women are the real victims?
Because that's the way society is today. Women are the victims, not men, and it doesn't matter what they do. To say that statement right there, and again, the society thinks that's the way they think. And to say that is literally taking accountability away from what they do. But there are a lot of women out there that do horrible things, and I've seen videos of guys who had posted where their wives or their girlfriends were just bashing them. You know what I mean? Berating them, and just making them feel like they was like dirt. And so to say that, if you're watching those videos like I was just talking about, where the woman's just berating this dude for pretty much nothing. I seen this one video where this woman was jumping all down this dude, and made him feel like he was nothing because he didn't give her a hug the first thing in the morning. And yeah, when you're saying things like that, you look at that situation I just explained, is the woman really the victim in that? No. But society thinks so. Because they're going to be like, well, what did he do to provoke that? And he didn't do anything. Stop taking accountability away from the women who do bad things.
Well, after years of researching and fact-checking what the men's rights activists were telling me, there is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of the draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths, disproportionately men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues. at our
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna run that back one more time. Please pay attention to that. Like she said, these are human rights issues, meaning we're supposed to have the right to be protected by this stuff. These are human rights issues that disproportionately affect men.
of researching and fact-checking what the men's rights activists were telling me. There is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of the draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths, disproportionately men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues.
Wow. I counted 19 different things that she just listed as to the human rights issues that disproportionately affect men. So when women want to talk about this women's equality, look at that list right there. Please listen to that list right there, to everything she just listed. That's inequality. That's what real inequality looks and sounds like. And she said paternity fraud, meaning a woman can put your name on the birth certificate, whether you know about it or not, and you're automatically reliable for it. Next thing you know, you get a letter in the mail that says you owe child support. And and you end up paying child support for a kid that's not yours. And she said veterans issues. And she said workplace deaths and war deaths, overwhelmingly men. And it kind of goes back to the whole custody thing. The child support and the loss of custody, and those are two of the biggest injustices that a lot of men these days have to deal with, is the loss of custody and child support. Because we're having, and every man who is paying child support knows for a fact, your child support is not going to that woman. I mean, how many guys, have paid their child support, and then, later on in the month, your baby mama hits you up for more money, talking about the kid needs clothes and or shoes or a jacket or whatever, and you're like, well, I just gave you all this money for child support. Where did that go? And then she's like, well, I got bills to pay. I have to pay my rent, and child support is not to pay your bills. And yet that's what so many women use it for. Women are living in, like, they don't have to do anything, and they're being supported by the man. So when you talk about equality, where's our equality in that? We're working our butts off, and I've seen the paychecks of guys who are paying a pretty good penny for child support because they're only getting their kids every other weekend. And when you're looking at child support, the two biggest problems with that is, for one, like I said, the child support is not actually going to the child, it's going to the mother for whatever it is she wants to use it for. The other problem with that is when they consider child support, and this is a really big problem, and it really should be considered when they're figuring out how much your child support is going to be. When they're looking at your child support and how much you're going to pay, they're not looking at your cost of living. It does not matter what your rent is. It does not matter how much you're paying for car payments. It does not matter what your monthly grocery bill is, what your monthly light bill is, your monthly water bill, and any other necessities that you have to pay for. They do not care about any of that. None of that. is calculated into how much you're going to pay for child support. The only thing they consider, how many days does this woman have the kid for, and how much per day does it cost to support that child. And that's how they figure out how much. And then if you get the child every weekend or every other weekend, which most guys have that kind of arrangement. So let's say you're getting him every other weekend. You're getting him 4 days out of every month. So for 20, what is that? 20. Just say 30 days in a month. So for 26 days, they're going to look. This is how much it costs to take care of a child per day. And they're going to times that by 26. Because that's how many days she is allowed to keep that child away from you. And you're paying a boatload of money for a child that you don't even get to see. Really. I mean, 4 days out of a month. Granted, and enjoy every bit of time you can while you can. But 4 days out of a month for as much as you're paying is ridiculous. And I stated this in the last video that I posted before this one. If men are going through the system, if we're paying for a lawyer fee and we're fighting for our time with our child, we should be guaranteed 50-50. And child support should be off the table at that point, because if I have half custody and you have half custody, that means the half of the year he's with me, that's my responsibility. I am not asking you for anything. At the same time, the half of the year that he is with you, it is your responsibility. You do not ask me for anything. But that's not the way the system works. They allowed a woman to take the kid. How many guys, like she said, and she said loss of custody. And, how many guys are getting child support from your baby mamas? How many guys have at least primary custody over your kids while the woman has every other weekend or every weekend? There may be a few here and there, but the majority of the time, the roles are reversed. It's the woman who has the majority of the time, and it's the man who has literally part-time. He's a part-time dad because that's all he's allowed to see his kids. And the standards for that is completely opposite. The standards for a father to get that 50-50 that we want so bad, you've got to be, on the up and up. You've got to have a clean record. You've got to have all your ducks in a row. You can't be behind struggling on bills. You got to be able to provide very well for you and the child. Whereas the woman doesn't have to do any of that. She can be completely living off of her family, boyfriend, husband, or new husband, whatever, government, whatever. She can be living off of any and everybody rather than going out and working for her to take care of her child. She has everybody else taking care of her child for her, so she doesn't have to do anything. That is perfectly okay for the society and the court system. But if a man decides he wants to do that, you can't get your kid, because the way they see it is if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of that child. So if you're holding the father, and I do agree with that part. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of a child. But if you're going to hold fathers to that standard, why are you not holding the mothers to that standard? And it goes back to what I said earlier in this video when she was talking about single mothers' rights. They've always had that. It's the men who don't have equality. It's the men who have to fight for what we want, and we rarely get it.
And are heartbreaking if you are the victim or you love someone who is the victim of any one of these issues. These are men's issues, and most people can't name one because they think, well, men have all the rights. They have all the power and privilege.
And that's exactly what they think. That's why they can't name one issue, because to name an issue means it kind of really goes against their narrative, and they're not going to do that. And I really please, if you can, anybody, male or female, if you can list how men are we have the power and the privilege. What power and privilege do we have? This lady listed, again, like I counted it. I may have missed one. I may have counted one extra. If I did, let me know. I counted 19 different ways that humans' rights disproportionately, or 19 different human rights that disproportionately affect men. So if that's the case, if that's the reality, what power and privilege do we have?
These issues deserve to be acknowledged. They deserve care, attention, and motivation for solutions.
That's what we really want. Especially the men's rights activists. That's what we really want. Motivation for a solution. The whole reason we're saying something is because we're tired of it. Something has got to change. And guys, if you're going through similar injustice, because I've been through my own. I've been through the court system, family courts, and I've dealt with other other child agencies, and I've seen how they completely undermine dads and undervalue the dads. Okay, so I've seen and felt the injustice. All right, and that's one of the reasons I'm making videos like this, is to bring awareness to that very, very big, serious issue. It's because at the end of the day, my child is suffering right now, and nobody is listening to me because I'm the dad. And it's not just me who is dealing with the injustice, it's my son who is suffering because of it. So I encourage you guys, if you're dealing with injustice, don't be quiet about it. Because I brought this issue up to some people in my own personal life, and family members and stuff. And one of the common responses I get, or a couple of the common responses I get, is for one, well, that's just the way it's always been. There's nothing you can do about it, or that's just the way it is. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. That doesn't mean it's okay. And the only way you're gonna get a change is if you speak up. Make them listen. Like this lady, was talking about when she was doing the interviews, she wasn't listening. Make them listen. Because it needs to be heard. Your issues matter. Your injustice matters. And the only way we're going to get any resolution is to keep talking about it. Because the longer we stay silent, the longer it's going to continue, and the worse it's going to get.
Before making the Red Pill movie, I was a feminist of about 10 years. And I thought I was well versed on gender equality issues. But it wasn't until I met men's rights activists that I finally started to consider the other side of the gender equality equation. It doesn't mean I agreed with all that they said, but I saw the immense value in listening to them and trying to see the world through their eyes. I thought if I could get my audience to also listen to them, it could serve as a rung on the ladder, bringing us all up to a higher consciousness about gender equality. So in October 2016, the film was released in theaters, and articles and critic reviews started to roll in. And that's when I experienced how engaged the media is in groupthink around gender politics.
That's why I use the word society so much. They have a tremendous amount of influence over groupthink around gender equality. And they're trying to push this issue, like she stated earlier, they're trying to push the issue that women are the victims. Men are not the victims. Women are the victims. And they cannot push that narrative if men are speaking up about the injustice that we have to deal with. So they automatically got to shut that down. Because they're trying to get the rest of society to agree with what they're saying so that they can continue that side of the narrative. It's not about reality. It's about what they want you to believe.
And I learned a difficult lesson. When you start to humanize your enemy, you, in turn, may be dehumanized by your community.
Quick translation. She said, when you start to humanize your enemy, you are dehumanized by your community. What that means is, when you start, especially as a woman, as a womanist, if you start understanding that men have issues, and you start addressing the fact that men do deal with a great amount of injustice, and you're going against the narrative of the womanist, but now you're a problem. Now you are part of the enemy. You are the traitor who has joined the enemy's side.
And that's what happened to me.
See?
Rather than debating the merit of the issues addressed in the film, I became the target of a smear campaign.
You see, instead of watching the video, and that's the way a lot of women are in society, instead of watching her video or documentary and saying, you know what, I never thought about it that way. She does, make some very good points, and maybe I should start listening to the injustice that men have to deal with. No, they didn't say that. They started bashing her for talking about men's issues, for talking about men's rights and how they're not being addressed. She got ridiculed for talking about what we as men are trying to actually pursue, which is our equal rights that we're not getting.
And people who had never seen the movie protested outside the theater doors, chanting that it was harmful to women.
and it's because they already knew that she was speaking up for men's rights. They didn't even, like she said, they didn't even watch the movie. How do you know if it's harmful to women if you didn't even watch it? That shows you how their mindset is. Like, they're not even going to take the time to address the fact that men have issues, and they don't want to listen to a woman tell you that men have issues. In fact, they just want to shut it down. They don't even want to watch the movie and still protest that it's harmful to women. Which is not harmful to women. Because like she stated earlier, men's rights activists are not trying to defund any kind of assistance that women get as far as, certain situations. What they're trying to do is get equality for our situations. We're not getting the same resources that they are getting, and that's what they're pushing. So that's not harmful to women. That is just asking for y'all to actually care about what we're dealing with.
It certainly is not. But I understand their mindset. If I never made this movie and I heard that there was a documentary screening about men's rights activists that didn't show them as monsters, I too would have protested the screenings or at least signed the petitions to ban the film because I was told that they were my enemy. I was told that men's rights activists were against women's equality.
See? That's what the majority of society is told. And if you go back to what she said about men losing, the thing that disproportionately affects men is the loss of custody. That means the people who are teaching their kids this, and I don't mean her specifically, but in today's society, the people who are teaching them that men or men's rights activists are the enemy is usually single mothers. And and that's a bad thing to be teaching your kids, is that men are the enemies.
But all the men's rights activists I met support women's rights and are simply asking the question, why doesn't our society care about men's rights?
That is a very, very good question. I'd love to know that myself. Because like she said, she became the target of a smear campaign for that documentary about men's rights activists who were speaking up for the injustice that men have to deal with. And instead of understanding what she was saying, understanding points that were made in her film. They just protested it and tried to ban it. So why does society not care about our issues? Why are they so eager to paint the woman as the victim and so disregarding towards men, as if we're just irrelevant?
Well, the greatest challenge I faced through this whole process, it wasn't the protest against my film, and it wasn't how I was treated by the mainstream media, even though it got pretty disgusting at times. The greatest challenge I faced was peeling back the layers of my own bias. It turns out I did meet my enemy while filming. It was my ego saying that I was right and they were subhuman.
Wow. And that's the way a lot of women view men. Subhuman. And if you don't know the definition, subhuman means, and I'm not trying to make you sound dumb or make it out like you're dumb, but there's some people who may not know what that means. Subhuman means you are less than human. Okay? So to say, her ego and her bias made her believe that she was right and you were not even you were not even as important as a human. You are less than a human being. You are like a creature that just doesn't matter.
It's no secret now that I no longer call myself a feminist, but I must clarify, I am not anti-feminist, and I am not a men's rights activist. I still support women's rights, and I now care about men's rights as well.
Again, what rights is she referring to? I really don't get it. What rights are y'all women fighting for that you don't already have? See, when she's talking about men's rights and the men's rights activists, that's what we're doing, is we are fighting for the rights that we do not have. Whereas y'all are claiming to fight for rights that you already have. And yet, even though you've got these rights, you're still pushing that narrative that you're fighting for your rights. You have the rights. You have the right to be a CEO. You just don't want it. You have the right to make the same amount of money as a man does. You're just not as ambitious. The women who actually fought for those equal workplace rights and voting rights and stuff, those women were ambitious enough to go for the CEO jobs. And they became CEOs. But women today in this society, in 2021, they don't have that desire. They want to stay at home and they want to create an OnlyFans page, and they want to have a man support them and basically have everything just handed to them and catered to them. Women don't want to be CEOs anymore because it takes much time and work and effort. That's why there's not enough or not what you say is enough CEOs women CEOs anymore. It's because these days women are not pursuing that. Once they get a guy that's going to take care of them, they just kind of, dip out of the workforce and let him do the job for them. And like I said, the rights that we as men are fighting for are rights that we actually do not have. We don't have rights to equal custody. Very, very rarely. I have it, and I really, really had to fight for it, even against my own attorney's advice. But men, we don't have equal rights, especially when it comes to marriage. Marriage in itself is a complete risk for men and absolutely non-beneficial whatsoever. It fully benefits a woman and absolutely does not benefit a man. So the rights that she's talking about that men's rights activists are fighting for are rights that we do not have and we should have. Because the laws are gender equal. Our court system is not.
However, I believe if we want to honestly discuss gender equality, we need to invite all voices to the table. Yet this is not what is happening.
Exactly. That's not what's happening. And like I said, men's rights activists are not trying to, devalue women for the issues that they actually do have. Okay? We're trying, like, when we're speaking up, we're not trying to be the enemy. We're trying to get to that damn table that she was just talking about. We're trying to be part of that discussion, but y'all keep shutting us down. You can't have a discussion if you're silencing one party.
Men's groups are continually vilified, falsely referred to as hate groups, and their voices are systematically silenced.
See? Exactly what I just said. I called that one out and didn't even mean to. Systematically silenced. So, when you get all these women who talk about this quote-unquote systematic oppression, that's not systematic oppression, okay? You are holding yourself back. If you are not a CEO, and I don't mean a CEO of your OnlyFans page, I mean an actual CEO of a company. If you are not a CEO, it's because you did not pursue that. It's because you did not want to put in the work it took to get it. You are not oppressed. You are holding yourself back. If anything, you are oppressing yourself. Men, on the other hand, have so much injustice that we have to deal with and no resources to help us deal with it. And like she said, we are systematically silenced. So anytime we speak up, doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter if you're going to, a law enforcement. Doesn't matter if you're going to a court system. It doesn't matter what kind of agency you're going through. We are systematically silenced. We're told to shut up and deal with it. You don't have a choice in the matter. You are a man. Take it like a man. Shut up and deal with it. Women are the victims, not you.
Do I think either movement has all the answers? No. Men's rights activists are not without flaws, and neither are feminists.
The problem with that is, and I didn't mean to cut her off there, but the problem with that is when she says she met her enemy and it was peeling back the layers of her own bias. That's what feminists are. They're automatically biased against men. So no matter what we say, they're just biased against it. They don't care. They don't want to hear that. And every situation that comes up is going to be based on their own internal bias towards that man.
But if one group is being silenced, that's a problem for all of us. If I could give advice to anyone in our society at large, we have to stop expecting to be offended, and we have to start truly, openly, and sincerely listening. That will lead to a greater understanding of ourselves and others, having compassion for one another, working together towards solutions, because we all are in this together.
I agree with that point right there, and I want to touch on that real quick. We are all in this together. When she says you need to listen, that doesn't mean like I went over earlier. You don't listen in anticipation of being offended. You listen so that you can understand where they are coming from. That's what listening means. Okay? And what everyone needs to understand is that, like she said, we are in this together. This is our planet. It is not a woman's planet. It is not a man's planet. It is our planet. Every life matters. Every life that is sharing this planet is in this together. Okay? It is up to us to make it work. And you cannot make it work if one party is systematically silenced.
And once we do that, we can finally heal from the inside out. But it has to start with listening.